What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Floyd Street's Finest, presented by Great Flood Brewing Company. I am Jeff Greer, joined by my buddy Jack Grossman. We've got an opportunity here to press pause on the guests because there's just so many different things we need to talk about, Jack. We've got so many different things to process. But before we do that, we're going to talk, obviously, about Emoni Bates. As of our recording, we're like a few hours fresh from Emoni Bates committing to Eastern Michigan, which we'll get more into. It was kind of where I thought this thing was headed. I tried to hint at it. Of course, I didn't know that would be where he would go, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Obviously, we also need to desperately talk about Fabio Basili, who, one, has the greatest name of all time. Incredible. And two, just trying to figure out what is going on with that situation. Is he coming to Louisville? What year is he in? He actually told me before my last newsletter, yada, yada, yada. We got plenty to talk about with those two guys. And we also want to talk, of course, about the importance of the 2023 class for Louisville basketball. It's a huge class. It's very much akin to that 2019 class for Chris Mack. Obviously, his didn't pan out, but the ability to get some big names in and have a big class early gave a lot of people something to look forward to with Chris Mack. And I think Kenny Payne has the opportunity to do the same thing in 2023. He's just got to now go out and do it. And it's that time of year with the recruiting stuff getting underway. Before we talk about all of that stuff, of course, first and foremost, who cares where we are in the year? Field of 68 just brings it. I mean, it is a relentless supply of content. The draft stuff was relentless. Lots and lots of information there. And obviously in the off season here, we're talking a lot about recruiting, talking about next year, talking about player decisions, coaching hires. Jack, did you see the LIU news today that Derek Kellogg was fired on June 29th?
Did you see that? That's breaking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shocking news here, which is funny because he was the point guard of my first, like one of my three all-time favorite college basketball teams at UMass. And my real first love of college basketball was the UMass Minutemen. So every time I still follow him closely, him and Tony Barbee and some of those guys who played at UMass, who are definitively Cal guys.
Oh, absolutely.
But played at UMass and were stars there. Always.
Are you booted off the podcast or saying that you liked the Cal UMass teams?
There's nothing else I can do, man. I was like 7 between.
You should have known he was going to be the Kentucky coach.
From the ages of like old enough to understand, so like 5-6 years old through elementary school. I mean, I was a diehard UMass fan. Would have taken a bullet at age 9 for Marcus Camby. Lou Rowe was my guy. Dana Dingle, Dante Bright, the 95-96 UMass Minutemen. Unbelievable. I always get it. I'm like, wait a second, 94, 95, 95, 96. They went undefeated through 26 games. I watched them hold off the University of Rhode Island in Providence after my family had moved from Amherst. So just, you know, it was fun to watch them back in the day. Cal used to get tossed all the time from games and get texts and stuff. Man, it was a lot of fun back in the day. So I am not afraid to admit, look, I know Louisville fans, you know, they might razz me for this. They might get on me, but hey, I was a little kid, fell in love with college basketball, and UMass was my team. We lived in Amherst. We went to games. We watched a lot of games. I mean, it was, you know, it was life there. So I'm not ashamed or afraid to admit to Louisville fans that was my first love of college basketball. But no, make sure that you're following everything on YouTube. We've got the Field of 68 channel on there. Of course, the 3-man weave guys, you got to follow them. Goodman, Doster, Robbie Hummel, the crew. There's just so many different guys. Of course, Jack's twin brother, John Fanta. I mean, there are just so many different great personalities and great basketball knowledge. Guys with great basketball knowledge out there to be following through the Field of 68. So please smash the like button, subscribe to everything across all socials. And while I have your attention, a message from our friends at Great Flood, Jack. They have been wonderful support for us, and what a difference a few months can make from when we were reading the old promos. The old promos were about promise. They were about the future. They were about the potential, what Great Flood could be for some people, because it was already a great beer shop for those of us who enjoy a frosty beverage. Now you can come have a beer, bourbon, and a glass of wine, or a glass of wine, it depends on how you want to mix it up.
Multiple
At Great
glasses.
Flood. Yeah, I love that. You could just have a big night. I wouldn't mix them too much, but you can lay a foundation with one and then build on the other. But the weather has warmed up here on us here in Louisville. As you know, you can come out and enjoy the patio. Of course, the Douglas Loop Tap Room has seating, open seating for people. And of course, out in Middletown, there's all kinds of great seating and opportunities out there to enjoy the friendly staff and welcome what will be one of the most exciting off seasons in basketball and football in Louisville. And we sure know, but the football offseason has been fascinating to follow. But of course, men's basketball is always fascinating as well. We are proud sponsors at Great Flood, and we can't wait to serve you. So shout out to our friends over at Great Flood. I swear to you, even if they weren't a sponsor, when people say like, where should we go in town to have a good drink, that's the first place I always recommend. So shouts to our guys.
Absolutely. I'm planning on being there this weekend.
Yeah,
Little
I love
4th
that.
of July.
Hey, Jack, I love it. I absolutely love that. I have lost a lot of money there at trivia. Well, it's not lost because of the drinks, but trivia night has cost me a pretty penny. But let's dive right into it, Jack. As you may have heard, Emoni Bates, who it was just a fascinating story. I keep using that word, riveting, compelling, whatever word you want to use, or the exact opposite. There's a lot of people who had just completely checked out, were annoyed by it. Whatever their opinion was, he committed to Eastern Michigan, the alma mater of Earl the Squirrel Boykins, and his hometown school back in Michigan. So, Jack, I think most Louisville fans had moved on from Emoni Bates, but still, this just kind of spelled the end of what had kind of been lingering for a while about where he was going to possibly go, because as we had heard for a little while there, it was always, he's down to 6 schools, but it's really Louisville and DePaul. And slowly but surely, both of those schools faded from the situation. Then we heard about maybe there was a phone call to Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Penny quickly swatted that down, and now he's going to Eastern Michigan. What do you make of this whole situation? I mean, we don't need to go in too deep into Emoni Bates because he's not going to Louisville, so it's not really that big of a deal for us from that standpoint, but more just the impact on Louisville and how you feel like Louisville fans are interpreting this latest news.
I mean, Emoni Bates was always going to be a risk reward guy in the terms of if you get him, he's a dude with all of this potential. Obviously, people compared him to Kevin Durant and all those things when he was 15 years old, former top recruit, a guy to where if you boom with him, you're probably making the NCAA tournament and he's probably a lottery pick. Mm-hmm. But that was very far from a guarantee. There, you had all the stuff that happened with him at Memphis. You had all the rumors and theories about it. It was like, oh, his dad's kind of a LeVar Ball type. He's kind of brings a lot of extracurricular stuff to the program you may or may not want. And for Louisville, you take all that out, and it kind of completes the transfer portal cycle in terms of he was the last really big transfer out there of, okay, this is kind of the roster for the most part that we can expect to see in the winter. And the fact that the coaching staff wasn't able to land any of the big name guards, is that going to be the thing that comes back to haunt U of L in Kenny Payne's first year and be the reason why this team, while being more likely than not a lot more competitive than they were last year and obviously establishing a culture and doing all those good things, are we going to look back and say they needed some more guys that can handle the ball to be an NCAA tournament team?
I mean, I think the answer is probably yes right now. And you're right. I mean, look, Emoni Bates is not a point guard. He's not, but he can be a secondary playmaker and ball handler for you. And that's what Louisville really needs. I mean, you've got right now, you're looking at a roster, and we'll talk about Fabio Basili in a second, but assuming he comes, that's a big relief. I don't know how talented he is, but at the bare minimum, he can get you from one media timeout to the other so that LLS can play 36 minutes instead of 40 at point guard, basically. But you are walking a very thin line if you're Louisville right now, because you just have LLS. Mike James is coming off an injury. He does appear to be close to being feeling comfortable again. He answered a bunch of questions on his Instagram stories. I don't know if you saw that, Jack, or heard people talking about it in any place, but was answering all sorts of different questions and basically said, like, I don't know that he's been fully cleared yet, but he's close, or I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was along the lines of like, he's close to feeling like he's 100% playing, but he's not there yet. And so those are your two guards. I mean, those are your two guards. You've got Kamari Lands is really a three. He can help you handle the ball, but he's not someone you want bringing the ball up, I guess, if that makes sense. Devin Ree is another guy who can help you cross half court against a press, but he's not really a playmaker. He's not really a guy who can be your secondary handler and help make plays for other people and create. Neither of those guys really is. And you run into a situation here where you're like, okay, that's it. That's your group. So then it's like, okay, Jalen Withers was supposed to be a little bit of a playmaker as a stretch four last year. Maybe they can work with him to do that a little bit better. But you're stretched awfully thin just from a game minutes, season load management standpoint. I think LLS is good enough, I think, to have some good coaching, have a good year. He can play a lot of minutes. But the problem is one, he can't play 40 minutes every game for 31 games plus the postseason, whatever that looks like. And two, what if he turns an ankle? What if he gets sick? What if he, God forbid, has to like go home for a little bit for family something? You know, you just like whatever situation it is.
We've seen everything last few
yes,
years.
I mean, in Louisville, you've seen everything. What is the safety net at point guard? And just in the backcourt in general, what is your safety net there? And I think that's a legitimate question. It's a fascinating question. Now, I gotta find a new word, Jack. I'm saying fascinating a lot. Fabio Basili. Okay. Last week, he had just finished up his visit on Wednesday. He started, I think, on Monday and visited through Wednesday. I think those are the correct dates. I slid in his DMs and I said, are you a reclass candidate for 2022? And he said he wanted to set the record straight. He said, I have never been in 2023. And I still see people talking about it. It's like, guys, it's in my newsletter. It was in the newsletter
I have
last
his
week.
247 pulled up right now, and it still says he's 2023.
Yeah. And it's in the newsletter, which you can get. I'm going to sit down and write it after we finish recording this podcast. It comes out on Thursday mornings. Fabio straight up told me, I am not a 2023 kid. I'm a 2022 unsigned senior. And he wanted to keep playing on the circuit because he was unsigned. That is common. I've seen that before. It's not like there's like a bajillion of them at these grassroots events, at AU tournaments, but there's, one or two or three or four. Like I've seen it before. It's not uncommon. We've heard about maybe TCU and SMU being involved in some way, shape, or form. I've seen in a few places reported that he has offers from there. I don't know if he does or not. All I know is he said, look, I'm a 2022 kid. So now it's a matter of like, he basically has been posting as if he is already going to Louisville. Someone tweeted good luck. And someone posted on Instagram, I think it was his barber, Good luck in Louisville. Best of luck in Louisville. After
I love recruiting.
Mike James and all these other people commenting on his post that was just an official visit post. It said official visit to Louisville, and all of them were basically like, welcome to the family, essentially. So I guess we're all just kind of wondering, like, is he coming to Louisville? And of course, the danger of recording a podcast and putting it out as like tomorrow morning, of course, he's going to commit. But it seems like he's going to go to Louisville. And if that's the case, you get him, you get Hersey Miller as a walk-on who appears to be at least like a competitive walk-on. Does that make you feel any better about Louisville's backcourt, Jack?
Not really, no. I mean, Fabio Basili's a guy, he's a very big unknown in a lot of ways. The fact that, again, 24/7.
What if he's awesome? Like, what if he wins the starting job?
Well, if he's a baller, then that absolutely changes everything, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at Louisville right now, and the whole issue is, as you just outlined, they don't have guards.
Yeah.
What happens if L. Ellis gets 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes of a game?
Yeah.
You don't know. No, or if he has foul trouble, or he's an injury.
Or Mike James gets
stuff.
foul.
Yes. Yeah. What happens if something like that happens? You don't have an answer right now. If Fabio Basili comes in and he's a stud, then that fills in a lot of the issues that you've had. However, I'm not going to expect that because, again,
we'll leave that to the people who are going to tell you that he's the same. And I'm not trying to disparage him. He looks like he has potential to be a decent player.
If nothing else, he is a body.
Yeah, he's a warm body on scholarship.
And Louisville needs some scholarship bodies that can handle a basketball, run an offense, and provide some playmaking. And if he can provide that, which, he's listed as a guard, so I'd assume he's a guard. Again, he's not, Fabio Basili isn't someone that we know a lot about, but it can only help. It's low risk, high reward. In the same way that someone like Emoni Bates would have been. Very different reasons because, obviously Emoni, highly touted recruit, all those things. But from the standpoint of it's a low bar, if he comes in and he's a reserve and he develops into something later in his career, you can say, okay, that's fine. Fine, that'll work. He's a body that's better than nothing else.
Yeah.
However, if he's something more than that, then you say, okay, that can maybe not completely solve, but be a patchwork for some of the biggest issues that Louisville's going to have, which all of the biggest issues that Louisville's going to have, and that's going to be guard play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's everything right now. That is everything. And I mean, Mason Faulkner came available later in the cycle. Sidney Curry came available later in the cycle. So like, I still am in this point where I know it's almost July.
Where else could those players come from? Because we're sitting here right now, the transfer portal, like we haven't heard.
You have to get a waiver. Yeah, no, it'd have to be someone maybe who goes and gets hurt, or someone who doesn't like the initial steps that they take and work on it. And I think there's rules about that, but you would have to withdraw from school, get in the transfer portal, and get a waiver. So, I mean, it would be, because you remember it took a little while for Mason Faulkner for them to get everything approved and feel like he would be ready to play. And he was coming off an injury too.
How likely would something like that be to happen?
I don't know. I can't even put a percentage on it. It's better than 0, but it's less than 100%. How's that for a range? It's somewhere in between. I don't know. I don't know. It's unlikely. Yes. It seems unlikely. We'll put it that way. It's very unlikely, just because of the number of schools that still need someone, and how frequently you hear about this. The odds of them being a difference-making guard who enters the transfer portal after July 1 has to be very, very, very slim. But Jack, we're on a time limit here. So I want to make sure we get to this one last thought here, because I want to get your thoughts on it. I mentioned it at the top of the show, the 2019 recruiting class for Chris Mack, really for at least a year or two, kind of was the anchor of the argument of things are going to work out well for him at Louisville. Obviously did not pan out the way he had hoped. The jury is still out on Jalen Withers. He still has time. He was one of the members of that class. But a lot of those guys either have moved on or just didn't work out. How important now with all the other stuff we're talking about, because now Louisville is in a situation where you're like, right now, I don't think they're a tournament team. I don't think they're a tournament team. I think maybe top 12 in the ACC is a worthy goal, and maybe you play your way into the tournament at the end of the season, but they don't look like a tournament team right now, just on paper, because they just don't have the depth that they need. But how important is this 2023 class? Like, how badly does Kenny Payne need DJ Wagner to commit to Louisville for people to chill a little bit in this city?
It's everything right now because of how the 2022 season is more likely than not going to go. 2022-23, that is because I'm with you. I don't think they're a tournament team either. You can't only have 9 scholarship players and one pure guard on the roster and expect that to be a tournament team. Now, maybe they prove us all wrong and they end up going on a great run and they make the tournament and really have huge overachieving expectations in year one, but I don't think it's fair to Kenny Payne and this roster to sit there and say, I expect you to make the tournament and I'm going to be incredibly pissed off if you don't. It's just not fair right now. And that's because
Louisville ain't fair, my friend. Louisville ain't fair.
And in any other year, I would agree with that. Yeah. But the fact that you're taking over a team that went 13-19, it was not a great transfer portal class, to say the least, in terms of top end talent or in depth. And you still have, I know people hate it, the NCAA IRP stuff, to where I know you've been strong on, you don't think they're getting a tournament ban. I personally don't think they're going to get a tournament ban if anyone actually cares what I think. But we don't know. And for someone like an Emoni Bates or a Tyrese Hunter, who are underclassmen, are thinking more of the NBA, that may not impact them as much. But you look at some of these other grad transfers, guys that only have 1 year of eligibility remaining, aren't NBA prospects. You're looking at and say, do I want to go to a place that's coming off of 13-19 and there's not a guarantee that they'll even be allowed to play in the tournament? That's a really tough selling point, and that's something that's not going to be there in 2023. So if you can land DJ Wagner, which would be absolutely monumental, get a top 5 class to build around him, then you can start to say, take the deep breath and say, all right, you're going to be fine. To where I don't necessarily think that the short-term, quote-unquote, losses during the transfer portal season for this season is fair to judge him on how things will go in 2023 and beyond. I still think he'd be really good despite all the time because of everything I laid out a minute ago, to where you look at it and say, all right, you're still in a position to have success long term, but it starts with that 2023 class. Because if you whiff on a couple of guys in 2023, especially DJ Wagner, that's really when the alarm bells may start to sound a little bit.
Yeah. It truly has become what people said it was going to become, which is borderline hired Kenny Payne to get DJ Wagner. And
which obviously you want more than that, but
you want more than that,
to need more than that. But yes, that's a launching point.
That is your flagship guy. And it sounds like the AJ Johnson kid in 2023, another guard who's a fast rising guard, I think he's like top 40 right now, but is expected to keep rising. Seems to really like Louisville. Louisville's paying a lot of attention to him. I know they're looking at bigs. But if they can get a really dynamic backcourt to come in on the end of this class or this season with a thin backcourt and a guy like El Ellis, who, look, if he has a good season, he wants to go play pro. He wants to go make money. He said as much on our podcast. You got to think a guy like Mike James at 6'5", 6'6", he needs a year probably, and he redshirted last year, so he still has 4 years of eligibility. But he's another interesting character. It's like if he has a good season, what does that portend? Because now, if one, NIL money is going to keep a lot of kids in school, but two, there's still that same number of opportunities to go play pro. If you just want to be a pro, you can go be a pro. You don't have to go to school. And I think that that's an attractive option for a lot of guys, even if they're not going to be on an NBA roster. So there's a lot at play here, Jack, but it's gotta be, if you're not going to land anybody to help you out this season, you're putting yourself in a tough spot. It could be a frustrating year for them. Maybe there's a lot of growth, but they lose a lot of games. So then you could say, you know what, though, DJ Wagner, AJ Johnson, a few other guys like Xavier Booker. I don't know if they'll be able to get a guy like that. It might be a little bit difficult to get a guy like that. Get those guys in here and you say, this is our big class. This is our Fab Five or whatever, Fab Four, whatever nickname you want to call it. We're going to pin all of our hopes to that. I think people will buy in. Jack, we've got about a minute left here. This is how cheap I am. We got a minute left here on our Zoom. So right now, though, I just want to get this on the record. Right now, Louisville, in your mind, not an NCAA tournament team, correct?
Correct.
Does Basili, would having Fabio Basili step in? I realize this is a ridiculous question. Does it nudge you at all?
I think for me, I thought Louisville was really two pieces away. And Kenny Payne said this as much in a presser about a month, 6 weeks ago, saying we're looking to add like two more guard wing type pieces. And I agree with him. I really think that when people thought they were getting Emoni Bates, it's like, okay, good. You need to get Emoni Bates and a Tyrese Hunter and a Malachi Smith. And to not get any of those guys, Fabio Basili is not nearly enough, I don't think, to fill that in.
All right. I agree with you. And we'll see how it all pans out. But Jack, thank you for your time, my friend. You're a busy fella. I'm a busy fella. I'm glad we could get together and do this. And everybody enjoy your July 4th weekend. We will be back in force.
Eat some hot dogs.
Eat some hot dogs. I'm going to talk some recruiting with folks when we come back from the holiday weekend and get into that part of the year. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Floyd Street's Finest.